I'm Elaine Minardi. I'm a co-brain of Never Summer. I am here today with Michael Horn, the author of Blended, Disrupting Innovation to Improve Schools. I'll have to record all of that again.
No worries,
But
no
anyway.
worries.
So I saw Michael at the conference for blended and online learning in Denver earlier this year, and he had a great story about milkshakes and the whole idea of selling milkshakes to students. So Michael, would you share your story with us?
Yeah, sure thing. So the idea of bringing milkshakes into education, which may not be totally intuitive to people, actually came out of this question of us asking, how do we motivate students to really get excited about coming into school and learning and doing all the things that we want them to do? How do we make it so that it's intrinsically motivating for them? And when we thought about this question of redesigning schools to be intrinsically motivating, what we reflected on was research that we had done in a very different sector in the commercial world near milkshakes of how do you motivate customers in general to want to do anything? And what we found was that the ways we typically think about motivation actually aren't how customers themselves view their lives and situations. And what I mean by that is we'll segment the world by age or demographic or product category or whatever else, and then do focus groups, ask people how to make improvements. We get answers and we make changes and nothing budges. And it's fundamentally, we don't conform to the average demographic. We as users or individuals just have situations arise in our lives, and we have to get what we say jobs done in our lives, and we hire different services to help us do those jobs. And so the classic example was from this story in the 1990s where this fast food restaurant wanted to improve the sale of milkshakes. And so they knew the average demographic most likely to buy a milkshake and what percent market share they had versus Burger King and Wendy's and McDonald's and so forth. And so they called these people in to focus groups and asked them, how should we improve milkshakes? And they got answers and they made changes and sales did not budge. So a different group came in and just asked, I wonder what job people have, what job are they trying to do when they hire a milkshake? And so rather than ask people how to improve the milkshake, they just stood at the back of the restaurant one day for 18 hours and took copious notes of any time someone came in and bought a milkshake. What time of day was it? What were they wearing? What else did they buy? Were they with someone else? Did they drink the milkshake in the restaurant or go off to their cars slurping it down? On and on and on. And at the end of the day, they saw that 80% of milkshakes were sold at 2 times during the day. 50% in the early morning rush hour commute, kind of gross, and 30% in the late afternoon. Now, of the 50% group, what was really interesting was that every single one of them came into the restaurant by themselves, bought nothing but a milkshake, and then every single one of them would take the milkshake in hand out to their car and drive off slurping it down. And so the next day they came back, and rather than stand at the back of the restaurant, this time in the morning they stood outside the restaurant, and when people left with milkshake in hand, they confronted them and asked in language that they would understand, excuse me, when you just hired that milkshake, what job were you trying to get done? And they got sort of quizzical looks and whatever else, and they said, think about the last time you were in this situation, doing whatever it is you're doing right now. What else did you buy? And they said, come to think of it, I got like a 20-minute, 30-minute drive to work right now at 7 a.m. I'm not starving at the moment, but I know if I don't put something in my stomach, I'll be starving by 9:30 a.m. And, the drive has always been boring, so I just kind of want to keep myself awake, so I don't fall asleep at the wheel. And come to think of it, last week I hired bagels. But take it from me, bagels don't do the job well at all because they're dry and tasteless. And if you want to make them taste good, you got to spread cream cheese and jam on them, which means you start driving with your knees. And if the cell phone rings, man, you got major problems. I hired donuts a few weeks before that, but that was not a good idea either, because I lied to my wife about the fact that I had hired a donut, and she saw right through it, because when she got in the car that night to drive off, the steering wheel was completely gummy and sticky from the donut. So that backfired. You know, once or twice I hired bananas to do this job, but actually bananas were the worst of all, because the stupid banana was gone in 20, 30 seconds, and I was bored for the rest of my commute, and it didn't really fill me up. So I was starving by, say, 9:45 a.m. So the banana was the worst of all things. But it turns out that when I come in here and buy the milkshake, it just does the job perfectly, because it's so thick and viscous. It takes forever to suck up that tiny little straw and easily lasts me my 20 or 30-minute drive to work. And no idea what's in it. But again, it just sinks to the bottom of my stomach. I don't know if it's healthy or not, but easily keeps me full until about 11:30 when it's lunchtime. So it's perfect there. And, you know, God gave me two hands. I've always used one to drive along with it, never knew what to do with this one. But there's a cup holder right next to me, and the milkshake fits just perfectly inside. And so it turned out that the milkshake did the job better than its competitors along this morning rush hour commute situation, which weren't just other milkshakes, but those things plus bagels, donuts, coffee, Snickers bars, bananas, you name it, right? And so understanding the job helps you think about motivation of how you help fulfill what these customers are really motivated by in very different ways. Briefly, in the late afternoon, same demographic came in, but this time they came in with their kids. And they would hire the milkshake now basically to placate their kids and make themselves feel like good parents, but very different hiring criteria, as you can imagine. And so as we thought about how this relates to education and what job do students have to do, we thought, you know, there's a lot to learn from the milkshake, because it turns out the milkshake isn't the job, right? The job was the rush hour morning commute or to make me feel like a good parent. Similarly, in education, school is not a job that kids have to do. School is something they can hire to do the jobs in the way that they spend their time. But their motivation is really that they want to experience success and make progress every single day in their lives. They want to have fun with friends, things like that. And school really doesn't do that job all that well for them, because the opportunity to feel success and make meaningful progress only occurs every 3 to 4 weeks when an exam is given. A lot of exams are graded on a curve to make you feel like a failure. You can experience success and have fun with friends in extracurricular activities like the arts or music or athletics, but those are extracurricular things. We separate them out from the academics. And then when people have fun with friends in traditional classes, we yell at them for disrupting class. But really, if you understand that job to be done, you could design a very different schooling experience, one that, say, is competency-based learning. So students only move on once they truly have mastered something, which means you'll be constantly teaching in their zone of proximal development, so that it's, you know, right above their level, motivating, because they keep playing this game-like experience to learn what they want to do and get that fulfillment of that success and progress. Similarly, you'd use a lot of project-based learning probably as well, because it gives an opportunity to work in teams with your friends against meaningful academic projects, constant opportunities to feel success as you work through milestones in the project and so forth. And so you can imagine that understanding the job to be done from students' perspective would cause you to redesign that schooling experience in very different ways, because really it's not that students aren't motivated. The milkshake teaches us that students are plenty motivated. It's just school isn't always nailing that motivation for them. And so, you know, things like video games and gangs and athletics and arts and music and so forth are all competing for the time. And so the question is, how can we redesign schooling to get done what obviously adults and responsible educators want to communicate and help build in students to be lifelong learners that contribute to society? But equally so, we have to understand it from the student motivation perspective. And so that's really what asking what job do you hire a milkshake for taught us.
Great. That's wonderful insight. One more quick question for you.
Sure.
For educators, what do you think will be the best use of our time and energy to create those new models that will hire students?
Yeah. So I think it's a great question. My sense is that for educators, trying to create this future of schooling, it's really first important to just have open brainstorm sessions where you throw away the schedule of your existing school and think, what could we do with the time that we have? Like, what sort of pursuits would we want to set up for students that would make schooling intrinsically motivating so that they would come up here ready and eager to learn on a daily basis? And really think through that and then put that back together in a schedule. And my sense is, you'll use technology to help blend learning so you can personalize, and you'll create opportunities for projects and making spaces and robotics, and leverage new staffing models and all those things. But I think really starting with an honest look of what are the experiences we need to provide our students with, blank slate, let's dream, and then start to figure out how to connect that together in in service, if you will, of helping students get their jobs done, I think is the right place to start to creating a meaningful schooling experience in the 21st century.
All right. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.